So, Vince, let's dive into the next part of our matchup, and that is the
Yes.
Notre Dame pass offense against the Purdue pass defense. And this is going to be a very, very interesting matchup. Now, the statistics are intriguing. Notre Dame obviously has been a very good passing team so far when given the time to throw, because there's one number that looks unlike all the others.
The one down there at the
It's
bottom.
this one right here, right?
Yeah, right?
This is also a little misleading in my opinion because it includes, number one, it's 2 games in. No, it also includes the Hail Mary interception. But this is a good number. Look, they're in top 20 in some very important categories: efficiency, completion percentage. I'm sorry, this is supposed to say completion percentage, not completion percentage allowed. I will correct that when we print that. But completion percentage, Notre Dame is 16th in completion percentage. Notre Dame is 37th in yards per completion, which is okay. That's, obviously you want to get some more play yards after the catch. But the others, they're top 20. And those are good numbers. And then you're going against a Purdue defense that's not top 50 in passing yards allowed. That's barely top 15 yards allowed per attempt. That 11.0 yards per completion is a decent number. Barely top 40, right at number 40 in completion percentage. But then they are 20th in pass efficiency defense, which is helped aided by the fact that they haven't given up a passing touchdown yet.
Sure.
Now, you look at a couple things, you dive a little bit deeper. That sack number is incredibly misleading, because they only have 1 sack so far, but they have been very disruptive. George Karlaftis has yet to record a sack. George Karlaftis has been you watched the film, Vince, you saw it. He's
number
getting
5
in the back and he's impacting the quarterback.
Number 5 is everywhere.
Rushing throws, taking off and running. They don't have much of a pass rush outside of him. You're going to need a George Karlaftis plan for this game. You just are, and we'll get into that. But don't let that sack number mislead you. Yes, and I know that's also supposed to say 2021. So the chart game is not where it needs to be today, Vince.
It's all good to me.
That is on me.
It's all good to me.
But when I look at this, Vince, this is the area where Notre Dame is going to have to be successful. But again, it all comes back to the question of can they do that with the way the offensive line is played?
Sure.
That's the big question for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, one of the strengths for Jack Coan is that he is, number one, he's willing to go through all of his reads. Number two, he's willing to take shots down the field, et cetera. Well, both of those things require some time, right? Both of those things require him to stay in the pocket and do all of those things. And it's one of the strengths that we think that he has, and he does have, but they need to be able to protect him. And there's things that you can do to protect him against a live defensive end, right? A guy, not live, that's maybe not the right word, but a guy that's going to be in your face, a talented kid who is
disruptive.
Active. There you go. I was thinking lively, active. Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be that guy. And so there's things that you can do. And we can go over some of those if you want. You can max protect. You can basically assign a running back to his side, wherever that guy is. That's the side that you're going on. You can rub off of him and then put your running back out into, pass routes and things of that nature just to slow him down, because really that's all you need to do. You need to slow him down. You don't want him to get a sprinter's start because right now both tackles are struggling with speed rushes, and they just are. And I would say that that's more coaching than it is physical ability because of what I'm seeing from the footwork. But bottom line, that they're struggling with speed rushes, and Karlaftis he kind of has both. He's both a speed guy, but he can also power you.
He's very twitchy.
Well. Yeah. And so he worries me. There's no question about that. But again, there's things you can do to scheme away. You can go away from him. You can go right at him. Don't even block him if you're going to run zone read. Things of that nature. That's always when I coach in a triple option offense or an option offense or a zone read option offense. It's hey. Where's our best player? Is he the defensive end? Okay, we're going to option him. Make him wrong, right? If it's a defensive tackle, you can option the tackle. Make him wrong, right? That's something that you can do. That's where a Tyler Buchner, package comes in the run game, right? So there's things you can do to slow him down, but you're going to have to focus on him. You absolutely have to.
This is why the run game is so important, because the max protections don't matter if you're not getting more of a run game. And here's what I mean by that. What we have seen so far this season is they're basically teams are rushing 4 and 5 and having success. We've seen very little heat 'em up moments for Notre Dame. A lot of the pressures have come off 4-man pressures.
Absolutely.
The problem with that is and then if you're max protecting and you're keeping 2 guys in, and let's say there's 3 guys in a route, because technically max protection is 8 guys, but we're just talking about in your base 11 personnel. Max protection is any running back tight end, right? Essentially is how I mean that. So if you're in your 11 personnel, that's 7 guys. You got 3 guys running a route against 7 guys, 6, 7 guys dropping into coverage. It's not going to work out real well. It just isn't. And so if you are able to establish some run game and able to then, okay, now the safeties have to maybe get triggered a little bit more, because we saw that against Purdue or Oregon State. Oregon State's quarterback missed some big opportunities in that game. They benched their starter, and then the second half brought in another guy, Chance Nolan, and he had a lot of success throwing the ball on them. And there was open guys and just opportunities for bigger plays, because Oregon State's a good running team. They were last year. They had Jefferson last year who rushed for a bunch of yards. So Purdue was worried about that. So they were triggering their safeties. They were putting 7, 8 guys in the box. I don't know if they, after watching Notre Dame in 2 weeks, if they're still going to do that. I think right now you watch this team, the bigger concern for me is the perimeter. Absolutely. I'm making sure Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin and Braden Lindsey don't beat me and make them beat me with their offensive line. I can't believe I'm saying that, but that's anyone that's watched Notre Dame's film is going to look at that and say that. So then you say, well, okay, Max Pro doesn't work if you're only bringing 4 or 5 guys. That's why the running game is so important, is you got to trigger that box for Notre Dame, because max protections come on 1st and 2nd down, right? If you're max protecting on 3rd down, you're in for a long season. So I think that's something, Vince, is that ties into that Max Pro. You're right on the Max Pro. That ties in, though, however, to the first point we discussed about the running game, which if they can get that going, that then leads to some more things that they can do in the pass game. So I think other things they can do to slow down that rush is they need to have some screen games towards George Karlaftis' side. They need to be able to, chipping him and things like that. Teams have had a pretty good plan so far for Notre Dame's chips, though. When the backs step out, they're triggering linebackers up the middle, like the late blitzes up the middle, which has been pretty good. And because Notre Dame has been such a vertically oriented offense, meaning not a lot of, of this stuff, they can do that because they know that they're not going to have a guy running behind them. I think that's something else we can see in the pass game this week, which could be effective, is a few more levels, Vince. I think some high lows over the middle. Their corners are good, not great. They have one corner, Corey Trice, who's like 6'3", almost 215 pounds, big kid, 23? Long. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Okay. Big, strong, physical. He
was the
kid.
one that I was impressed by him. I thought he played pretty well against Oregon State.
Not super fast. But good player. He's going to be a physical kid. So, go ahead, Vince. Did you freeze up on us? Yeah, I think Vince froze up on us. So, so when you look at their corners are good players. I want to get their safeties in coverage. I want to be able to attack their safeties and linebackers in coverage. And you can't just do that with vertical stuff. That's a part of it. But I'm trying to get them working crossers, and that's where Oregon State had opportunities. They had guys on drag routes and crossing routes and things like that, where if their quarterback could make a read and get the ball out, they'd have had some success. And when the backup kid came in there, he started having some success with that, Vince. You froze up when you were getting ready to talk. We were talking about Corey Trice, Vince, and you froze up. So it looks like he's still freezing up. So I think those are areas where there's opportunities to be had. Notre Dame has done those things. They're just going to have to maybe do those things at a little bit more of an increased volume.
Sure.
Just to keep Purdue on their heels, but also then to create some isolations. I think I would use Michael Mayer a little bit more as a decoy this week. Notre Dame has not sent him on a lot of just pure vertical routes up the middle. I'd like to see the 4 verts be used this week out of the 12 personnel to 2 tight ends. To get those safeties and linebackers running, and then bring your receivers on
them underneath,
and then flare your backs out, and then George Karlaftis is coming, and that linebacker is going to flat on Kyron Williams. I've got Braden Lindsey coming on a crossing route right behind that guy, catching it in space, right? Those are concepts that like Oklahoma likes to do a lot, that North Carolina does, that are real successful against, in those situations, especially if you have a back that teams are going to have to respect and cover. So there's some things I think Notre Dame can do schematically to make their pass game more able to protect their run game.
Yes. And to protect the offensive line too. I mean, it's going to be opportunities for them to get the ball out a little, like some of those crossing patterns and things of that nature. They're quicker, right? I mean, they allow the ball to come out a little bit faster, right? And it allows your athletes to get in space and be, running at full speed when they get the football, and all those things can benefit Notre Dame with the team that they have.
I'm going to add to that too, Vince, is I think that the more levels in a pure drop back also gives your quarterback more options if the pressure comes.
Sure.
The problem with running so much downfield stuff, and again, it shouldn't have to be this way. Schematically, what Tommy Rees is doing is fine. The problem, however, when you're running more of a horizontal stretch, because horizontal stretch requires more, just everybody's kind of getting into deeper routes. So like they ran a play that against Toledo that was an incredibly well-designed play. Last year's offensive line, if it's still at Notre Dame, Jack Coan hits Braden Lindsey on a 20-yard in cut, and Braden Lindsey runs maybe for a 60, 70-yard touchdown. Like, it was a very well-designed scheme, but the problem is all downfield routes. He's not going to have time to do that.
Right.
So something I would like to see do is, hey, run that concept, but then run like something shallow to the backside. Maybe you run like a snag concept, where your outside guy just kind of comes inside and just hitches up and your back flares out, right? Maybe do something like that. Maybe you run that concept, but then you bring your X on a, your W on an under route, crossing route, to where if you don't have that time, hey, I check it down to Kevin Austin and hopefully he has a step and he can go make a play. Maybe they break it up. Maybe it's incomplete, but I'd rather do that than have to ask Jack Coan to manipulate and move around 3 different defenders who are beating offensive linemen.
Sure.
So I think if you start doing some of those kind of things, now all of a sudden Purdue says, okay, we got to come up tighter. We got to take away those crossers. We got to do this. We got to do that. Hey, let's go back to our single high, because Purdue wants to play a lot of single high when they're playing a team anyway that can run the ball with any kind of success. Well, if Notre Dame can have just a little bit of run success, but then start hurting them with quick game, hitches, slants, quick outs, screens, jets, reverses, crossing routes. And all of a sudden Purdue has to respect the pass game like you would most teams' run game. Now they're going to have to get that second safety down in the box, go back to more cover 1, cover 3 stuff with a single high safety. Now that's when you say, okay, now we've got our one-on-ones outside back.
And that's what we want.
I want to see more back shoulders this week, okay? That's also something you can do where, hey, look, yes, we can drop back and throw the ball downfield, but Jack, we don't have a lot of time this week. So if you get an outside one-on-one and they're playing off, you hit that step and you throw it to Kevin's back shoulder. You throw it to Joe's back shoulder. You throw it to Dion's back shoulder. You throw it to Braden's back shoulder and cause them to stop. Because I have a feeling when Braden Lindsey's to the field that Purdue, based on what we've seen, is going to bail that field corner. And if
everything underneath is going to be wide open.
If I'm back shouldering Braden Lindsey 20 yards down the field, he's stopping to catch that ball, and that corner is going to still be in a pedal.
Right.
I mean, now that's where you can get Braden going. So there are some things like that I think they could do. Some quick flood concepts. Maybe it's a 10-yard out instead of a 15-yard out where Jack can kind of hit that last step. He can read the flat defender and get it out. That's another great concept to run. A flood concept is essentially the outside guy runs a go route, the inside guy runs some kind of out cut, and then you have a back or a tight end if you're in a 3-by-1 formation that's running a quick shallow route. So it's a levels concept. You're flooding a zone.
Flooding the area.
Right.
And it's usually 3 for 2, more or less.
Yeah. So you'll take the shot downfield if it's like cover 1, but you're reading sort of that high-low. And so you get to your drop, the flat defender's either jumping under the undercut and you dump it off to the back. Now you're getting the backs in space, because I think that is something I'd like to see more is if teams are triggering you when your backs are releasing, then just release your backs now. Get your backs in space, and if that guy wants to come, bam, I'm taking it down. So again, swing your back to one side, free release your back to one side. If that triggers a blitz, that's cool, because you got Kevin Austin coming on a crossing route right behind that guy, replacing that guy. Those are some things that I think that Tommy Rees can do to protect his offensive line, to keep Purdue off balance, but also more ways to get the strength of this team so far, which has been your playmakers on offense. The best thing about Notre Dame through 2 games in 2021 has been its playmakers on offense at tight end, running back, and receiver.
That's undeniable.
These are also things that can allow you to get them, because like the one thing I like, and Steve Sarkisian talks about this a lot, Lincoln Riley does this a lot, I want to see more stuff where the Notre Dame receivers are catching the ball on the run.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a little bit with some go routes, but a lot of the go routes have been kind of, you're catching it contested. It's been stop routes. It's been option routes. I want to see some more stuff where they're catching it on the run.
That's why I like the crossers, man.
Drags, in cuts, which he's tried to do. Swing routes to your backs. I mean, those have been effective so far. I want to see them do some more things like that. That requires more of a vertical stretch implementation into your offense than more of the horizontal stretch. So I think because they've been so successful with the downfield stuff when they do have time, I think this is something that could certainly work. It could certainly work. Be very effective in this pass offense. Yeah. And now you're getting your best players matched up against guys that I don't think are in your level. Purdue's defensive line and linebackers concern me in the run game. If Jack Coan gets any time to throw in this game, he's going to have a field day against this Purdue secondary if he can get time.
No, I agree. And it's, Notre Dame is very lucky. They're, whatever word you want to use on the fact that their pass game and their skill position guys are very, very, very good. And you can make up for some deficiencies with the offensive line with that if you do it right. That's the key. If they didn't have dudes at wide receiver and running back and at quarterback or whatever, and you just bad all around, there's just not a lot you can do.
Well, they're 0-2.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question. And you're going back and you're drawing stuff up on the whiteboard and you're like, okay, guys, we got to figure something out here. Now you can scheme around some things because rare is it that a team is just great at every spot. That just doesn't happen that often, right? And so this is an opportunity for Tommy Rees and for this offense to show, okay, here's what we're good at. Here's how we're going to protect ourselves. Look, do we need to get better at offensive line? Absolutely. We're not giving up on the offensive line, but this is how we can get better, and this is how we can manipulate some things and get our guys who are playmakers the ball and ways in which we can do that. And I think that's what this game is really going to be all about. Let's see how creative Tommy Rees can be. Let's see if he really does have his finger on the pulse of this offense. And I think they can still be a good point scoring offense, right? It just
they have been
some adjustments.
We'll get to that here in a second, but they kind of have been to that. So advantage in the pass game, Vince, goes to in your
Notre
opinion?
Dame. Yeah, absolutely. Notre Dame. Yeah.
Even with the pass protection issues,
yes.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
So before we move on to the next one, which is scoring offense, John Rich had a super chat. John, I appreciate that. He says, guys with the injuries, John, remember the mantra, the most successful people, coaches in the world, are those who best handle plan B. And that's a great point, John. But this is also something we mentioned earlier in the week. It's not just about injuries. You have to have a plan B as a coordinator for if things aren't going the way that you thought they were going to go.
Right.
That's going to be a great test for Tommy Rees this year, is because with the offensive line, there's going to be games where it's like, okay, well, we thought we could do this.
Yeah.
That are they're not blocking. You have to have something in your back pocket to go to in those instances. That's what the best coaches do, and that's what Tommy Rees is, I know, striving to become, is a top coach. So certainly part of that. And so that's kind of where we are. And then before we get in, we have one more super chat I want to get to before we get to that. And the Rouse Production says, what do you need to see in this game to feel better about the O-line, not just in this game, but going forward?